What a season we had, right?
Just jaw-dropping.
Oh, no! Ever! And he makes the catch! Oh, my goodness! Inside the park home run! Electrifying!
Leave a legacy. A bit different time that bring me. I'm a legend, never ever made me. A supernova with an energy.
History! Number 300! You are unbelievable! Shea Ohtani starts the 50-50 club! That's insane!
A supernova with an energy. I'm gonna ride. I'm gonna win it, yo.
It's gone! A walk-off home run! Put it in the box!
Incredible.
Well, it's been an unbelievable season.
The 2-1 pitch. There's a fly ball hit out to left. Waiting is Jones. The Mets are the world champions. Gary Koosman being mobbed. Look at this scene. He nearly tore this ballpark apart when the Mets clinched their division pennant against the Cardinals. Here's the Met locker room. The Mets had 5 runs, 7 hits, no errors. The Orioles 3 runs, 5 hits, 2 errors. Sport Magazine has declared Don Clendenon as the outstanding player of the series, and he wins himself a new Dodge. And it was a come-from-behind victory for the Mets today. They were trailing 3-0. The celebration of the new world champions of baseball, the New York Mets, the final score. New York, 5 runs, 7 hits, and no errors. Baltimore, 3 runs, 5 hits, and 2 errors.
There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay, and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, french fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
Can you believe this ball game at Shea?
Oh, brother.
So the winning run is at second base with 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. If one picture is worth 1,000 words, you have seen about 1,000,000 words. But more than that, you have seen an absolutely bizarre finish to Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets are not only alive, they are well, and they will play the Red Sox in Game 7 tomorrow.
The next 2-2. Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K-Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move in slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. Those other bots are so I'm chill like bro, yo. Focus like a GoPro. Rip it up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Bring something with no. Throwing is going, yo, it's gone. Your heart just stopped, cause they got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I mean it. Pull up the pots, pull it down, then read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Tongue on your lips and eyes and spit backflips. Pick a tip, any tip, get onto it. I got ridiculous pods without forcing it. You sit at home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mixed it smooth with the groove to make ears wanna listen. Add a little gut and the rhythm back it up. Another show to my name, now watch me stack them up. You think another white rat back, but this ain't no ad catch. For hobbits and rhymes, some people trying to be black, but that's about time I come out, call the show BKP, now let me turn it out, yo. Name changes 8 born in 71. Dates, you know what time it is, I'm packing the guns, your experience. I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Half man, half podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Good moment, baseball universe. What's cracking? Welcome back into the dojo for chapter 169 of the baseball pod that gives a historical, biological, and anthological accounting of the players, characters, moments, stadiums, and all the pop culture references that have been molded and shaped our knowledge of the game in this beautiful tapestry of life we call baseball. I'm Jake Robinson. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear me. The 2025 MLB season is literally hours away as the Cubs will be taking on the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers. It's Tuesday and Wednesday at the Tokyo Dome in Japan. It's the sixth time the MLB season has kicked off in Japan as the Dodgers will embark on their title defense with reigning NL MVP Shohei Ohtani penciled in to start one of those games on the bump, as well as teammate hurler Yoshinobu Yamamoto. While the Dodgers had previously played abroad in Mexico, Australia, and South Korea, this will be the first time in history that the club will play on a Major League Baseball game in the land of the rising sun. The Cubs, on the other hand, faced the Mets in Japan for the season opener back in 2000, but this time they will bring along two Japanese superstar players of their own, and outfielder Seiya Suzuki and southpaw pitcher Shota Imanaga, who finished off his rookie campaign with a 3.0 WAR, 15-3 record, and a 2.91 ERA. As a guy of Japanese descent, I'm loving the influx of Japanese players in Major League Baseball, and I'm sure I'll be watching the game and wishing my grandmother, Haruko, was here with me to witness the influence her countrymen have had on this brand of big league baseball here in the 21st century. I'm kind of surprised that the Dodgers have never played in Japan before, considering it was, pitcher Hideo Nomo who opened the door for players from the island nation, changing the game for the better forever. Now, besides the Northsiders and the world champion deferrals, 26 other teams will celebrate opening day on March 27, which was originally the starting date for the other 28 teams, but the Rockies and Rays matchup was moved back a day to March 28th to allow an extra day to prepare George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, Florida. The spring training facility of the New York Yankees will serve as the Rays' home park this season due to damage Tropicana Field sustained during Hurricane Milton last October. So, the Marathon 2025 season is about to kick off. Excitement is abound. F1 racing has returned. And sidebar, what a first race of the 2025 season to get it kicked off in Australia, Albert Park. I mean, the track was greasy. We had rookies flying into walls, safety cars, and in the end, Lando Norris stays ahead of Max Verstappen for the last 3 laps of the race, which had to be very stressful in Lando. So, for the first time in 1,000 days, Max Verstappen is not the leading racer for the World Drivers' Championship. So, it's going to be a battle to the end, and I can't wait. Bring on Shanghai, China this Sunday for race number 2. But I'm not here to bore you about F1, but Major League Baseball is just hours away from resuming, and quite frankly, I'm happier than a pig in shit. My universe is on tilt during the off season. I use the NFL and NCAA basketball as a distraction from everyday life during the winter months, but baseball and Formula One are my true passions in life. I can slowly feel the balance returning, replacing the doldrums of yet another long winter. Thank you to all the listeners who have loyally supported the show during the last few months of downtime, and welcome to any of you newbies who stumbled upon the show in anticipation of the new Major League season, looking for the fish to the baseball Jones. My name is Jake Robinson, and I'm a baseball addict. I've had this disease since 1976 when I was 5, when the gift to this game was handed down to me by my Uncle David. And this game has been the essence of my whole being since that summer of 1976. And now I'm living the dream, preaching the gospel of the seams on a worldwide platform by retelling the history of the game and leaving this story behind for posterity. At my age, I've become grateful for every season that I'm around to witness another chase for the World Series title and for new chapters to be written in the game's rich history. For me, baseball is like the hot girl that got away, that still holds a certain place in their heart. I love this game. I invest in it. I cherish her. But usually come October, she breaks my heart. But, I'm a glutton for pain and disappointment. And baseball is a game of failure. You have to have a different mindset for baseball. When you, for every 10 at-bats, if you only hit 3 times out of 10 at-bats, you're considered one of the all-time greats. There's not another game where, for an all-time great to have 70% failure rate. The game is designed to break your heart, so I mourn her during the off-season, and I remember the good times instead of bad, and come spring, I'm ready again for the fruitless chase that deep down inside I know will again end in heartbreak. There are times when I check out the other chicks like the Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers, and I marvel at all the plastic surgery they undertake in the off-season, and yeah, I may privately think, man, my girl would look slamming with just a little tuck or a slight breast augmentation, but yeah, I'm a blue-collar man from a poor blue-collar city, and these things, this lifestyle is out of my price range. The best I can do is be accepting and loving to my girl who has brought me a range of emotions and time with her, but she's always been there, April through October, like clockwork. My whole life, the Orioles and the game of baseball has been there for me, and this is the show. This show is how I pay the game back, by paying homage to the sport that has been a part of my identity and will remain to be until my last breath on this planet. I'm joined, as usual, in the dojo this week with my ace, the felonious feline of ferocity, my little partner, the childhood tabby of tenaciousness, Little Gunner. Posting up in the conductor's booth or a BKP time travel themed diesel, enjoying a spot of Earl Grey infused tea infused with catnip, ready to take us on this week's baseball adventure through time. I'd like to get the last few remaining stragglers on the platform here at Terrapin Station to kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye so we can load up this diesel as I make the final prep for departure. As I look to the western Terrapin, I have an amazing view of our majestically manicured jewel box ballpark down the left field line to home plate, and the hometown BKP9 have come charging out of the dugout in anticipation of tonight's contest. The boys look ready to give it their best tonight. The starting pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. The catcher has gone down to second with an absolute seed on the bag. The infielder is flipping that rock around the diamond with a little snap and vigor, and the umpire has cleaned up the plate and called play ball. So, with the visitors team leadoff stick approaching the dish, that's my cue, as usual, to get this Steam Diesel on the track and get this show on the road. I'm calling all aboard, as I will have my boy Gunner set our time and destination this week for April 11th, 1886, Ridgewood Park in Queens, New York, for this week's introspective profile of the history of baseball in Queens, New York. So, hurry, step right up, get in where you fit in. You can post up in our expansive lounge or retreat to a private boxcar aboard our marvel of engineering and science for this week's adventure through time. As Gunner picks up the necessary quantum speeds needed to hit 6.0 gigahertz of RF on our spectrum analyzer, he's creating vast anomalous traversal wormholes needed to bend baseball space and time, tipping the celestial scales to our favor to get us back to April of 1886, New York City. I want you guys to get comfortable for the trip. Open your kimonos, kick off your shoes. Ladies, rip off those restrictive bras, stuff them in your purse, whatever you need to do to make yourself at home. Mikasa e Sukasa. The New York Mets has been the only major league team to call the Queens borough of New York home. In 1964, the expansion team set up shop at Shea Stadium on a marshy glop of land on the edge of Flushing Bay, on a site where garbage used to burn around the clock, or as F. Scott Fitzgerald called it in The Great Gatsby, a valley of ash. The Metropolitans were dreadful, laughing stock for 6 years, mediocre for 1, and amazing in 1969. There was no neighborhood to speak of around Shea unless you counted the auto chop shops that sat on the outskirts of her massive parking lot. But for 3 consecutive seasons during the late 1880s, the Brooklyn Grays / bridegrooms of the Major League American Association relocated from their stomping grounds at Washington Park to a newly constructed venue known as Ridgewood Park II, which was originally called Wallace's Ridgewood Park or Grounds. The reason for the location change was really straightforward and simple. Ridgewood Park was located in Queens, New York, where the state blue laws that prohibited the playing of professional baseball and other amusements on Sundays were loosely enforced, if at all. In 1890, Ridgewood Park II served as the everyday home park of the hastily organized American Association Replacement Club, the Brooklyn Gladiators. And for 3 decades thereafter, Ridgewood would host amateur, semi-pro, pre-Negro League contests, as well as soccer, hurling, American and Gaelic football matches. Vestiges of the old ballpark endured until being obliterated by neighborhood industrialization in 1959. Before the United States became a powerful country, they were just 13 colonies along the eastern seaboard of the New World. There was a Puritan tradition of restraint upon commerce and amusement on a Sabbath that dates back to the mid-17th century. The Dutch inhabitants of New Amsterdam, New York, adopted the Sunday Blue Laws in 1656, and the laws were subsequently enforced thereafter by British colonial authorities. Among other things, the law prohibited traveling, working, shooting, fishing, sporting, hunting, horse races, or even visits to the local pub and imbibing alcohol on the Lord's Day. Despite the laws rising on popularity with the German and Irish immigrants arriving in New York City through the latter parts of the 19th century, the laws remained sacrosanct to New York legislature dominated by nativitist Protestants. But by the 1880s of the Sabbath restrictions, they became spotted, particularly in the greater New York area. And Gotham itself, then consisting of only Manhattan and parts of the West Bronx, pro-blue laws are potent enough to prevent the playing of professional baseball on Sundays. The same held true in Brooklyn, which at the time is an independent municipality beyond the borders of New York City and the nation's fourth largest city. With the Sabbath being the only available day for the pursuit of leisurely activities by the middle and working class, New York and Brooklyn clubs in the National League and American Association were therefore prohibited from opening the ballparks on the day most likely to gain a large gate. But the situation in Queens was much different. Less densely populated and with considerable open space, Queens becomes a popular Sunday destination for the city dwellers from New York and Brooklyn. The visitor came by horse-drawn carriages and rail, and they enjoyed hotels, picnic grounds, and parklands that were open to the public. The revenue generated by the tourist trade and the developments which it spurred were gladly welcomed by local officials who overlooked the infringement of the Sabbath laws, and with the time, the Sunday diversions expanded to include baseball. In early 1885, local brewery owner George Grauer purchases 10 acres of land adjoining his already popular picnic grove in Ridgewood, an ethnically German enclave situated in Queens along the border of Brooklyn. George takes his newly purchased plot of land and he laid out an enclosed baseball diamond in the hopes of attracting paying customers to baseball games staged by the Long Island Athletic Club and other local amateur teams. The grounds became known as Grauer's Ridgewood Park, the number 1. In 1885, the Ridgewood Baseball Club is the home of the amateur Queen Nine, and they go 59-20 with only 4 of their losses being inflicted by other non-professional teams. And here we are, nerds, as Gunner has us pulling up into Queens, New York, April 11th, 1886, for a game at Grauer's Ridgewood Park, for a game between the Brooklyn Grays of the American Association versus the Queens Nine. Before a paying crowd of more than 3,000 spectators, the Brooklyn team trounces the Queens Nines by a final of 22-1 in a Sunday exhibition game. And even though the home team absorbs the blowout, the crowd is boisterous and overflowing. Brooklyn's owner and field manager, Charlie Burns, is so enthralled by the energy and enthusiasm for the spectacle, not to mention he's delighted that the ball game went unmolested by the local police, and he recognizes the stadium's income potential, and he immediately arranges the rescheduling of American Association games for his Grays to be played on Sundays at Grauer's Ridgewood Park. On May 2nd, 1886, the Brooklyn Grays and their American Association rival, the Philadelphia Athletics, inaugurated Sunday Major League Baseball in New York with a game that ends in a 19-19 tie after 8 innings. The New York sports writer of the Times, they're less than thrilled with the venue, deeming that the playing field was too small, and they complained that after a ball was hit over the bench, it would just get lost in the high fescues surrounding the park. But the turnstile proved to be a resounding success of the game, as 7,500 fans paid to watch the contest, and the Queens police were nowhere to be found. The Grays would play 13 more Sunday afternoon games that summer at Ridgewood Park, winning 8 of those games. The 13 games were well attended and a major factor in the 100,000 patron surge for Brooklyn home game attendance over the 1885 campaign. But as the season grinds on, Ridgewood Park proprietor George Grauer and Grays owner Charlie Byrne began to sour on their business arrangement. From his perspective, Grauer came to believe he could make more cash if he abandoned Sunday baseball and used the Ridgewood Park property to expand his lucrative picnic operations. Byrne had misgivings about the deal and various reasons for wanting out. The much maligned criticism of the playing field, which were poorly manicured and maintained, were prevalent from day one, but the small dimensions resulting in catchable fly balls clearing the bench and turning into ground rule doubles, it hurt the Grays owner. Also, the per diem that Grauer charged its tenants from Brooklyn carried a $200 price tag. $200 in 1886 has a monetary value of around $6,758 per Sunday game in the 2025 economy. Thankfully for Byrne, an alternate to Grauer's Ridgewood Park was located just 2 blocks away. Ridgewood Park 2 was the brainchild of William Wallace, an enterprising secretary of the Ridgewood Athletic Association. Born in Brooklyn in 1856 to Scotch-Irish immigrants, the young Wallace worked as a compositor, setting type for the New York Press, and was also a huge seamhead. In 1884, Wallace arranged to rent property in Ridgewood, just 2 blocks south of Grauer's Picnic Grove. A section of the newly rented grounds measuring 750 by 400 feet was then transformed into an athletic field featuring a baseball diamond. On April 5th, 1885, the Queens Nines hosted the Independent Athletic Club of Brooklyn on their new playing field, dropping a 3-1 nail-biter before 3,000 onlookers. A contingent of the Queens Police Department were on hand, but they did not interfere, determining that no disturbance in Sabbath was forthcoming. The 1885 summers could be quite profitable, with revenue estimated to be around $25,000, which has the spending power of around $820,000 in 2025. Upon the success of the 1885 season, Wallace doubles down and decides to expand his venue, forming the Ridgewood Exhibition Company. And joining him in this new venture is William Mayer, Harry Ruger, and J.F. O'Keefe. Shortly after forming the Ridgewood Exhibition Company, the trio purchases the rented property for around $12,000, which has a spending power of close to $500,000 today, and they set their sights on enhancing and expanding the seating capacity of the grounds. In due course, Sunday baseball in New York had gained its second venue, conveniently situated in Ridgewood, Queens, and became known as Wallace's Ridgewood Park, or Ridgewood Park number 2, as it's become known all these years later. The schedule at the new ball field included a regular slate of Sunday games. In addition to amateur Ridgewoods, the Wallace Grands were utilized by the Jersey City Jerseys of the minor league Eastern League. And given that Jersey City did not have blue laws prohibiting Sunday baseball at their home park. The Jersey's willingness to travel to Queens represented a powerful testament to the drawing power of Sunday baseball in Ridgewood. The Eastern League Bridgeport Giants would also travel from Connecticut to participate in Sunday games at Ridgewood Park 2 during the 1886 season. In March of 1887, the New York Herald reports that Wallace Park will be hereafter known as Ridgewood Park, and it was designated as a Sunday's home stadium for the Brooklyn Grays. To accommodate the arrival of a major league club, William Wallace and his partners installed a roofed grandstand behind home plate capable of seating 2,000 fans. In addition, open-air bleacher sections are extended along third and first base lines, and when completed, the ballpark seating capacity is sufficient enough to comfortably accommodate 12,000 to 15,000 spectators before the start of the 1887 season. On April 10th of that year, the Grays christened their new Sunday home field, drubbing the Boston Blues of the New England minor league 21-4 in an exhibition contest before 8,000 fans. On April 24th, 1887, Brooklyn and the first iteration of the Baltimore Orioles, who would eventually become the New York Yankees, inaugurated Sunday Major League Baseball at Ridgewood Ballpark. The stadium is overwhelmed by the largest crowd to ever experience a baseball game outside of Brooklyn, when nearly 10,000 ravenous seaheads crashed the turnstiles to watch the Orioles rally late to a 12-8 victory. Following a 6-week hiatus in the action, some 7,300 fans witnessed the Grays notch their first Major League victory in the Sunday ballpark, edging the Cleveland Indians 10-9 on June 5th. From there on, Brooklyn alternated victories and defeats and finished the season with a 6-9 record at Ridgewood Park. No matter the winning percentage, games at Ridgewood were an unqualified success at the gate. If you take the Sunday games estimates published in a Brooklyn newspaper at face value, the Grays drew 107,300 fans to 15 games at Ridgewood Park, yielding an average crowd of 7,153 fans per contest, which was approximately 2.5 times larger than the attendance of Grays home games at Washington Park, where they averaged 2,157 fans per game. William Wallace and his consortium of investors spent the off-season expanding the stadium seating capacity. The grandstand was enlarged and extended further down the third base line. Also, they set up temporary seating section that could be removed to the ball for soccer, hurling, and football. And those were installed along the left field line and beyond center field. This brought the seating capacity of Ridgewood Park over 10,000 with standing room only area sprinkled throughout the park to accommodate even bigger crowds. In 1888, the Brooklyn Ball Club, that had by now rebranded themselves as the Bridegrooms, scheduled 20 Sunday home games at Ridgewood Park, and on Sunday, when the team was on the road, either the Newark Trunk Makers or the Jersey City Skeeters of the minor league, Central League, would become the park's Sunday's tenants. The competition and action on the field is fierce. New Yorkers are falling head over heels for the newest sport, and everyone is making money hands over fists. But ominous storm clouds are hovering as politicians get involved. The Sunday Observance Association of King County, in conjunction with the prominent Brooklyn clergymen, began raising public objections to the disregard of the Sunday Blue laws in Queens. In late July, Brooklyn owner Byrne attempts to evade possible blue law citations by admitting Sunday games to patrons for free, with the caveat that each fan who enters the ballpark buys a scorecard. But Burns quickly realizes that Too much revenue is being lost in this strategy, particularly from the money generated by the sale of his Pricer grandstand seats, and he promptly abandons this strategy. Thankfully for Byrne, the Ridgewood Exhibition Company and the civic leaders of Queens continue to ignore the Sunday Blue laws, at least for the time being. Under new skipper Bill McGonigal, Brooklyn goes 88-52 in 1888 and rise dramatically in the standings, finishing second to the St. Louis Browns in the pennant chase, but the club slumps on the gate, drawing 28,000 fewer fans to their two stadiums combined than their total in 1887. Nevertheless, Byrne, who is still the owner of the ball club, renews his agreement with Wallace for Sundays in the upcoming season. However, a disagreement emerges between Byrne and Wallace in February of 1889 regarding the revenue split from the previous seasons, and it becomes public. Unless the issues are resolved to a satisfaction, Wallace threatens to subdivide Ridgewood Park into building lots and sell them off at 5 times the price of what they cost the Ridgewood Exhibition Company 4 years early. Wallace goes on record by saying, by next July, the elevated railroad will be running order to within a short distance of a park, and I honestly don't care if Brooklyn ever plays here again or not. In time, the dispute would get squashed, but it was the beginning of Byrne's growing dissatisfaction and frustration with the club's affiliation with the American Association. But for now, the status quo prevailed between both parties, and the Newark Little Giants of the newly formed Atlantic Association began taking Sunday games not allotted to Brooklyn. With Brooklyn barreling towards an American Association pennant, huge crowds returned to Ridgewood Park. On May 5th, 1889, the largest assemblage of fans in the young history of the sport blocks Ridgewood Park to watch the Grooms battle the Philadelphia A's. In the 6th inning, fans who had crowded behind the flimsy center field fence, they swarmed the grounds in such high numbers that the game becomes unplayable and had to be called a 1-1 tie. Across the city, hostile editorials are being published about the incident, and the blame is on the official tolerance of Sunday baseball, generating renewed calls for the enforcement of blue laws by the authorities in Queens. The unruly behavior by the fans empowered the Kings County Observance Association to again protest Queens' disregard for the blue laws. Adding to the vocal complaint is Reverend Abraham Newkirk Littlejohn, the Episcopal Bishop of Long Island. In early October, a Queens County grand jury was impaneled to investigate alleged Sunday Blue Law violations of Ridgewood Park. In time, misdemeanor charges were returned against William Wallace and his partners. While the charges waited deposition, Queens officials construct Halsey Street, which runs through the outfield of Ridgewood Park. Undaunted, Wallace and company respond by modifying the ground so that baseball would continue to be played there. To adjust for Halsey Street that now ran through the outfield, they moved home plate back 75 feet with a new grandstand capable of seating 3,500 patrons. A picket fence was then installed to define the new outfield territory. As 1889 draws to a close, Sunday baseball at Ridgewood Park becomes just a footnote to a much larger drama unfolding concerning the major leagues. 1890 saw the formation of the Players League, a new talent-rich organization threatening the monopoly of Major League Baseball. While the National League, and to a lesser extent, the American Association, were fending off raids and roster poaching by the Players League, Brooklyn's club boss took drastic steps when he bolts the American Association and aligns his team with the National League. Meanwhile, the Players League, led by New York Giants star John Montgomery Ward, establishes a team in Brooklyn called the Ward Wonders. And neither the bridegrooms or the Ward Wonders have any plans to play future games in Queens. Enter Jim Kennedy, a 27-year-old Newark sports writer who would be and a would-be baseball mogul, proposes that a third major league team be based in Brooklyn. Kennedy's club would be dubbed the Brooklyn Gladiators, and they would fill the void in the American Association after the Grooms bolted for the National League. An immediate problem rears its ugly head in the Gladiators' inception when the fledgling operators struggled to find a new home for the team, with the National League bridegroom occupying Washington Park and with Players League embedded in the newly erected Eastern Park. There were really no suitable grounds left for the Gladiators to call home in Brooklyn. So Kennedy Clubs schedules his home game at the nearest park available, Ridgewood Park. The collabo between club and ballpark would leave everyone so unsatisfied. The magic of the yard had diminished with the new construction after city engineers laid the road down in the outfield, and even worse than the new stadium layout, the Gladiators as a team were truly a dumpster fire loaded with a roster of has-beens and hapless non-entities who were never going to attract fan allegiance. With a modest crowd of 2,000 attendants, the Gladiators dropped their Major League debut 3-2 to the Syracuse Stars. The next day, the Gladiators pick up the first win in franchise history with a 22-21 victory over Syracuse in front of 700 mildly amused fans. On June 8, 1890, the Gladiators beat Syracuse 9-7 in the final Major League game played at Ridgewood Park. The next day, Kennedy takes his team and relocates to the Polo Grounds at Cougar's Bluff in northern Manhattan, where they defeat Syracuse again 13-7. With Brooklyn in last place, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, American Association officials put the Gladiators on the road for their next 34 games. These events would prompt a chagrined William Wallace to terminate Kennedy's lease. But Wallace and his company, they have a bigger crisis evolving. In July, a Queens jury convicts Wallace and partners William Mayer and Harry Ruger of maintaining a nuisance and allowing Sunday baseball at Ridgewood Park. The penalty was a $500 fine, with the jail time promised to the defendant should there be a second offense. In the meantime, the American Association pulled the plug on the Gladiators franchise, transferring the baseball team to Baltimore, where they would become the second iteration of the Orioles. It would be 74 years until a Major League game was played again in Queens, but Ridgewood Park would not stand idly by. A full slate of fall sports, soccer, hurling, Gaelic football would play before modest crowds throughout the 1890s. As for baseball, local officials would tolerate Sunday games between non-professional nines at the park. A blind owl would see return during a Sabbath matchup between the amateur Ridgewoods and Cincinnati American Association Club in July of 1891. But ballpark proprietor William Wallace was unwilling to jeopardize his freedom for a Sunday regular season game between American Association clubs, turning down the St. Louis Browns' proposal to square off against the Philadelphia A's at Ridgewood Park. During the 1890s, pre-Negro League clubs like genuine Cuban Giants began playing occasionally on Sundays at Ridgewood Park. This motivated Wallace to renovate the grounds, a process that would continue sporadically until America's entrance into World War I in April of 1917. Prospects for the Major League Baseball's return to the yard were dashed in 1904 when the New York Highlanders were thwarted in an attempt to play a Sunday game at Ridgewood Park. Despite the failed attempt by Major League Baseball, semi-pro and amateur games continued, and the pre-Negro League's New York Royal Giants became ballpark tenants in 1912. On September 19, 1917, the grandstand and large portions of the bleachers were consumed by a fire of unknown origins. So Wallace erects a smaller version of the ballpark on the northernmost part of the site. 10 years later, Wallace dies at the age of 71. In 1928, the grounds were reduced in size by industrial development, with soccer and track and field events used on what was left of the property. In 1959, the remaining remnants of Ridgewood Park would be consumed by building construction, and no memorial or marker can be found on the current site of this historic baseball structure that sat in Queens over 80 years before the expansion Mets make the borough their home. The national pastime roots in Queens, it runs deep. Another baseball venue that called the borough home was located in Woodhaven, in the corner of land that was located near the Queens-Brooklyn border called Dexter Park. It was situated on the corner of 75th Street and Jamaica Ave, and was the home park of the Bushwicks, a semi-pro baseball team. The stadium would also host exhibition games that MLB stars like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig would play in before thousands of crazy New York baseball fans. Nathan Strong was a baseball mogul who controlled semi-pro baseball in New York City through his ownership of the pre-Negro League's Brooklyn Royal Giants, as well as partial ownership of the Bushwicks, Dexter Park, the Bay Parkways, the New York Cuban Stars, and the New York Black Yankees. Strong also controlled the Intercity Baseball Association, whose members were semi-pro teams in the city. They paid no league dues, but they were required to book all their home games against out-of-town talent, and through Strong, they were expected to buy Spalding gear, all the uniforms, baseball, bases, and catcher equipment. In turn, out-of-towns could not book a game in New York City unless they agreed to pay Strong 10% of the game receipts, which was usually fine for visiting teams who would make 3 or 4 games in a series, thus making it financially worthwhile for a road trip into New York City. During the Great Depression, a number of baseball teams had severe problems creating revenue, but Nat Strong, who owned the Bushwicks, was in great shape, all things considered. Their admission prices were lower than big league prices. They played doubleheaders on Sundays, and most of the games were loaded with the best black baseball talent in the city. So the fans, they usually went home happy after watching a day of competitive baseball games. In addition to the Sunday doubleheaders put on by Negro League talent, the Bushwicks played every Wednesday and Friday night, and their players were well compensated. In the depths of the Great Depression, the New York Giants of Major League Baseball's National League were having financial difficulties. So Strong contacts Giants owner Horace Stoneham and offers a guaranteed purse of $1,500 to play a night game at Dexter Park versus the Bushwicks. In lieu of the guaranteed purse, plus a share of the gate, Stoneham agrees to the challenge. On Friday, September 23rd, 1932, the game between the two clubs go down. When the Giants arrived at Dexter Park, they're pleasantly surprised to see a crowd of 20,000 fans waiting and ready to watch the game. The Giants win the game 5-2, with Overton Tremper placing the Giants' offense going 1 for 3 with a double and 2 RBIs. On the Monday after the game, Tremper is visiting Strong at his office in Manhattan when Stoneham telephones, pleading with Strong to give him something extra over the guarantee because of the huge crowds. At first, Strong is non-committal, but by the end of the day, after conferring with Bushwick's owner, Max Rosner, he wires Stoneham an additional $1,000. In June of 1932, Bill Terry takes over the reins as field manager from manager icon John McGraw. In 1932, the Giants were a sad second division team, but by the end of the 1933 season, Terry has turned that team around. The Giants win the pennant and defeat the heavily favored Washington Senators in the World Series 4-1. On October 15, 1933, Giants ace pitcher Carl Hubble is joined by two teammakers, Hal Schumacher and Blondie Ryan, at Dexter Park, performing in a doubleheader barnstorming game with the Bay Parkways against the Bushwicks. King Carl overwhelms the Bushwicks in the first game to win 6-3 before sitting in the grandstands during Game 2 and patiently signing autographs for the fans. Hal Schumacher, who had triumphed over the Senators in Game 2 of the World Series, lost the second game 3-1 as Overton Tremper got 3 hits off of him for the Bushwicks. Blondie Ryan also had a tough day at the office, making 2 errors in the field and striking out 4 times in Game 1. The Bushwicks had earned the reputation as the best-paid semi-pro team in the city. At the conclusion of World War II, the Bushwick players were paid anywhere from $25 to $50 in cash for a Sunday doubleheader or single-night game. With the military draft going on, it becomes difficult to get players during World War II, and with gasoline rationing, the travel teams began to disband in droves. To boost revenue at Dexter Park, a midget auto racetrack is installed after the baseball season ends in 1950, with the track being fully operational by April of 1951. To accommodate the installation of the track, the infield had to be moved northeastward so that the track could circle the infield in foul territory, and also required leveling off the hill in center field. In addition, the fruit trees and vegetables that the groundskeepers had planted in center field were removed to make way for service pits during the races. The racetrack had ruined the baseball field, but with the Bushwicks baseball team operating at a loss in 1951, the team was disbanded at the end of the season, and the auto racing continued through 1955, when eventually the field will be sold. The stands were eventually torn down, houses were erected on the site. The Woodhaven Cultural and Historical Society erected a marker at the former site of Dexter Park that still stands today. And check it out, freaks. Like the greatest rapper who ever lived, Queensbridge's own Nas once said, "I'm trying to kick the shit you need to learn, though. That ether. That shit that makes your soul burn slow." So with the early chapters of the game's history in the game's history in the borough of Queens in New York City, and the scorebook with a big beautiful K next to it, the team principal has called me into the pitch to switch from hard compound Pirelli tires to a batch of sauce. Box, confirm. And I'm going to use this pit stop to mark the end of the first act of the story arc of this week's topic and step out to pay some bills. When I return, we'll dig into the team that is the centerpiece of the Queensbridge community and the New York Mets, and take a deep introspective look at the history and construction of the 2 stadiums associated with the franchise in both Shea Stadium and Citi Field. So, all that and more. Let me hydrate, get my mind right, project a story arc for Acts 2 and 3 of our examination into the fascinating history of baseball in Queens, New York. Let me hook her up with some treats for being an amazing audience this first segment, listening intently and watching me do my thing. It never fails. This dude loves hanging in the dojo with me. I love that dude. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Meet me on the dark side of the moon.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Jackie Robinson, 13 home runs into the left field stand.
Here comes Roger Maris. There's a new home run champion of all time. I don't believe what I just saw. Cal Ripken Jr. has reached the unreachable star.
This crowd on its feet and in unison.
This one has a chance. Mike Piazza, the Boston Red Sox, champions.
welcome to the first night of MLB Network.
Number 600 for Jim Thome. That ball is gone.
106. That would be a new record.
It is caught. Oh, what a catch by Mike Trout. The Cubs have finally won it all. The Atlanta Braves are world champions. He struck him out. It has happened. In their 51st season, Johan Santana has thrown the first no-hitter in New York Mets history.
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Gein, executive producer of Backwards K-Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner, specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fish and hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks. And one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Mom, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summer time shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
3-1 to Alonso. Williams sets. Here's the pitch. Swinging a fly ball to right field. Pretty well hit. Freeland back at the wall. He jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career. Pumps his fist as he rounds second. It's a 3-run homer. He's given the Mets a 3-2 lead. They all pour out of the dugout. Alonso on his way to home plate. They're waiting for him. He hits the plate. He is first congratulated by Nimmo. Hugged by Lindor. There are a dozen Mets waiting for him outside the dugout. Pete Alonso keeps this fairy tale season going with the fairy tale swing of his career. 3-2 New York.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Good brothers and good sisters, welcome back to the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network, and this is Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. I'm your fearless leader and gatekeeper of baseball's rich history, the good Reverend Snake Robinson, high atop the mount, preaching the gospel of baseball to the world, and I thank you for joining me this week. And before I dipped out for spots, I was telling you about the history of baseball in Queens, New York. A story that goes all the way back to the 1860s when Queens was one of the few municipalities in New York City to turn a blind eye on the Sunday blue laws that prohibited the God-fearing Dutch and England Protestant immigrants from participating in commerce or leisurely activity. I told you how the teams from Brooklyn, as well as teams from far away as Jersey City, would travel into Queens to play Sunday baseball. And I told you about the three ballparks that dominate the borough's landscape from the 1880s to the 1950s. Ridgewood Parks 1 and 2, located in Woodhaven, and Dexter Park, located off the corner of 75th and Jamaica Ave, which is housed the Bushwicks as well as some of the finest pre-Negro League talent in the city. I also told you about the two most powerful and influential baseball men in the borough during the years, and William Wallace and Nat Strong, and I gave you all the historical perspectives without barely a mention of the baseball team most famously associated with Queens, the New York Mets, who knew that Queen had such a vibrant baseball connection that goes back 80 years before the Metropolitan's inception. Acts 2 and 3 of the story will deal with the Mets and the two Major League Baseball stadiums they have called home for the last 62 years. When it comes to the first home of the Mets, save for the first 2 years of the expansion franchise when they played in the Polo Grounds, I think the New York sports writer George Vesey said it best when he wrote in the New York Times that nobody ever called Shea Stadium a baseball cathedral. Even so, many Mets fanatics, it was like a pair of your favorite pair of slippers. There was a comfort zone that the fans felt when they passed through the gates. New York City Mayor Robert F. Wagner Jr. dedicated Shea in 1964 and called it one of the most beautiful and modern facilities in the world. The luster would wear off quickly, as Peter Gammons remembers how within 3 or 4 years, Shea Stadium was an outdated entity. The multi-purpose crib was often derided, and she was the second of the so-called cookie-cutter concrete donuts after the Oakland Mausoleum that was constructed during the 1960s and 1970s. She had her drawbacks from day one, namely the location, situated near Flushing Bay, and like Candlestick Park, the blustering wind was fierce, and the cold weather Aprils could chill you to your bones, let alone during NFL games in the winter months. The neighbors were noisy, as planes from nearby LaGuardia Airport would often have their fixed flight plans fly over the structure. Their other neighbors had a seedy element, as a maze of automotive chop shops and junkyards sat next to the parking lot. The atmosphere in the concourse, stairways, and tunnels were dank, and it smelled of stale beer. The pitch of the upper deck was steep, and the seats were cramped. Still, though, it was home, and a fun place to watch the Mets and their amazing run in 1969 when they completed the improbable with a World Series victory over the heavily favored Baltimore Orioles. It was also the site for the 1986 World Series Game 6 and 7 against the Boston Red Sox, with both games featuring rousing comebacks. The 2-out, 3-run rally in the bottom of the 10th inning of Game 6, highlighted by behind the bag, he gets through Buckner. The routine ground ball trickles through Buckner's leg, what remains one of the most staggering World Series moments. 55,000 screaming Met fans, whose roar of approval was so vociferous, the bones of ballpark swayed with the noise generated inside the old girl. The excitement felt in the stadium went beyond sports, as Shea Stadium is arguably one of, if not, the most hallowed venue in all of rock music. The Beatles played before Pack House in 1965 and 66, as well as The Clash and The Who in 1982. In 1983, the Police performed before 70,000 fans. The Stones in 1989. Shea Stadium ostensibly was the birthplace of arena rock. The stadium also hosts AFL, NFL football games, pro wrestling and boxing bouts, soccer matches, religious revivals. Scenes from various movies have been filmed there, with those with specific Mets references like The Odd Couple and Men in Black, to baseball-driven stories such as Bang the Drum Slowly and the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. Now, to understand the whole Shea Stadium concept, it's only proper that I give you the backstory of lawyer William A. Shea, who lived from 1907 to 1991. He was considered the most powerful and unofficial manipulator of political influence in the state of New York at the time. He was a man's man, a tough dude, a big, square-jawed, blue-eyed, brawling New York dead-end kid who made good. He embodied the law firm of Shea, Gold, Clemenco, and Kramer, and he lived under the motto, if it takes a kick in the balls to win, then we're going to win. Great irony underlies the history of the Mets and Shea Stadium. In 1934, Bill Shea became the protege of Brooklyn's then Democratic Party patriarch George V. McLaughlin. McLaughlin, an investor in the Dodgers, was also the executive of the Brooklyn Trust Company, a guardian of the half of the Brooklyn Dodgers that was held by the man Charles Ebbets' estate, and his protege was Walter O'Malley, the owner of the Dodgers. Now, of course, we all know Walter O'Malley will move the Dodgers to Los Angeles in 1957, and the discussions to keep them bums in Brooklyn, discussions did include a biodome stadium at the site in Flushing Meadows, upon which Shea Stadium was later built. After initial interest and enthusiasm for the Queens project wanes, after O'Malley tours Chavez Ravine and La La, and he's promised the Walt Disney World of ballparks in the new Dodger Stadium. Around the same time, McLaughlin floated a proposal to keep the other local baseball franchise, the New York Giants, in the city at the Flushing Meadows site. By late 1957, it's pretty much fait accompli that nothing is going to keep the two nationally franchises in New York, so Mayor Wagner enlists Bill Shea to try and fill the void in the Big Apple by the defecting Giants and Dodgers. While the city is still smarting over the loss of the two baseball teams, Mayor Warner named Shea to lead a four-man committee of prominent citizens to corral a new National League team. So Shea decides to use Bryant's Ricky's Continental League as a springboard and his first steps towards securing another team. The Mets expansion team would sign a 30-year lease for Shea Stadium in October 6th of 1961, 4 days before the expansion draft. Construction commences on October 28th. However, with back-to-back brutal winter conditions in 1962 and 1963, in conjunction with 17 labor strikes, Shea would not open until a year after its original targeted date. The facility's original name was the Flushing Meadows Municipal Stadium. Other names were considered by Mayor Wagner, and his administration decided to name it after Bill Shea, despite Shea's humble objections. Queens politician Eric J. Trulick makes the first proposal for the name change, and on October 6, 1962, 4 days before the extension draft, and the city council makes it official on January 15, 1963. In the meanwhile, the Mets played at Polo Stadium the abandoned former home of the New York Giants baseball team. The American Football League Titans, also called the Bathtub Home. Titans owner Sonny Werblin would rebrand the team as the Jets in 1963, in large part because of Shea Stadium's close proximity to LaGuardia Airport. The Jets would go on to become the second longest tenant for the stadium, but they were always considered the redheaded stepchild until the departure in 1983. They were often forced to play too many road games early in the season, especially in 1969 and 1973 when the Mets made it to the World Series. Plus, the stadium never reached full capacity for football until the second month of the season because of its baseball configuration. Likewise, half the playing field consisted of dirt infield, which combined with the rain and produced treacherous footing and headaches for NFL players and coaches. The firm of architects and engineers that designed Shea Stadium was Prager, Cavanaugh, Waterbury of New York City, who ironically would be hired by Walter O'Malley to develop Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. When Shea was first built, it was hailed as futuristic, but as Richard Sandermeyer wrote in New York Times 2008 op-ed, Shea's design could have been more memorable if not for the compromises made by the city. City officials, they told the architecture firm to build it for $15 million and make it convertible for two sports. The finished product trended towards being a circle, which, quite honestly, it isn't optimum for either baseball or football, so the seats tended to be farther away from the field, from the action, than if they had been the structure for one sport. The Mets preferred the stadium not to be enclosed because they wanted the open summer feel, and the stadium was built to accommodate a dome at some point, but that day never came. The job wound up costing $28 million, and it was a stadium of many firsts. For example, it was the first stadium of its size to have an escalator system carrying fans to every seating level. It was the first structure capable of being a football crib to a baseball park by the means of a two-motor operated stands movable over underground shacks, but was also the first to have every seat in the permanently fixed stands facing center field without a single obstructed view seat. Now, one of those groundbreaking features would have a detrimental side effect when the movable stands and underground tracks began wreaking havoc on the field. So at the time, many late-season Met games inside of Shea Stadium featured an unsightly strip of dead grass where the seats had been removed, providing a unique September tattoo on the Shea Stadium grass. Shea Stadium and the Mets branded themselves as the team that was heir to the city's departed Dodgers and Giants. Until 1980, the stadium's exterior bore steel panels in its team's color, blue for the Dodgers, orange in homage of the Giants, and the panels used to rattle against the stadium's steel and concrete skeleton on a windy day. It was the only baseball crib to feature orange poles, a tradition that is continued at Citi Field today. And for the christening ceremony, Mr. Shea filled 2 champagne bottles filled with water. One from the Harlem River near the old Polo Grounds, and the other one from the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn. And though you couldn't see the canal from Ebbets Field, Dodgers fans who packed the sacred grounds would always insist you sure could smell it. The day after christening, April 17, 1964, the first ball game was played at Shea with NL President Warren Giles and Baseball Commissioner Ford Frick in attendance. Bill Shea threw out the first pitch, and the field was a marshy soup after the previous day's rain. And because of the faulty placement of the outfield drains, a flaw that plagued the stadium for years, the playing surface never properly drained correctly. Other problems surfaced at an inaugural game in 1964. The scoreboard display garbled messages because of short circuits and nearly 80 miles of wiring. There was massive gridlock before the game. The pumps in the boiler room failed, and the bathrooms spilled over. The Mets starting pitcher that day was Jack Fisher, who served on the first homer in the stadium's history to Willie's stardom, which was fitting. It was Willie's third home run of 60 he would clobber against the Mets, the most for any player against the franchise, until Mike Schmidt would eventually tie him. Of those 60 dogs Willie dropped on the Mets, 26 of them came at Shea Stadium, and Darryl Strawberry hit the most home runs at Shea with 127. The Buccos beat the Mets on that day 4-3 on a run-scoring single in the ninth by clutch-hitting second baseman Bill Mazeroski. In the middle of the Pirates rally was Don Clendenin, who would become one of the heroes in the 1969 World Champion Amazing Mets, and veteran pitcher Bob Brenn, who would join the Mets 2 years later, was the first pitcher to pick up a W in the career. The first year featured one of the rarest gems on June 21st, when Phillies hurler Jim Bunning deals a complete game, no-hitter masterpiece, striking out 10 in the first game of the twin bill. And even though Shea was considered a pitcher's park with spacious outfields and foul territories, as well as a tough backdrop for hitters to stare at, only one more no-hitter was ever tossed there when Pirates pitcher Bob Moose deals one on September 20th, 1969. And no Met would ever throw a no-no at Shea, or anywhere else for that matter, until Johan Santana breaks the drought in 2012 at Citi Field. Shea also hosted the 1964 All-Star Game on July 7th, and Mets second baseman Ron Hunt was an NL starter. Phillies outfielder Johnny Collison smacks the game-winning dong in the bottom of the 12th while wearing a Mets batting helmet. The Midsummer Classic would return to New York 3 times, to the Yankee Stadium in 1977 and 2008, and Citi Field in 2013. It was the home of Jane Jarvis, a talented organist who came on the scene in 1964, spicing up the game's action, entertaining fans during rain delays. It was also the home of signman Carl Earnhardt, a Queens resident who would bring a big bag of signs to flash during the game. Mr. Earnhardt had the uncanny knack of reaching into his bag and pulling out something appropriate for the live action of the moment. On August 15th, 1961, Beatlemania comes to America, and the Fab Four perform at the venue for the first show of their U.S. tour. They will return to Shea on August 23rd, 1966, as part of the band's final tour. During the 20 years that the NFL called Shea home, they were only above 500 in 5 of the seasons. The franchise's peak came with the 1969 Super Bowl victory over the heavily favored Baltimore Colts. A litany of remarkable moments happened at Shea in 1969. On April 10th, the third game of the season, center fielder Tommy Agee clobbers a Larry Jaster of the Expos pitch into the upper deck and left field, which was very hard to do because only a small portion of the left field upper deck stood in fair territory. In fact, no other home run ever reached the upper deck in the stadium's lifespan. The seat where the Agee shot landed was marked with a circle bearing the date and Agee's number 20. After a year after splooging all over Baltimore's NFL team and Major League Baseball team's lips and the championship scenarios, the rock band Creedence Clearwater Revival, Paul Simon, Miles Davis, and an unfilled Janis Joplin blew the proverbial roof off the joint when they perform on August 6, 1970 at the Summer Festival for Peace. The following July, the venue would host a Grand Funk Railroad concert, and according to lead singer Mark Farmer, as the band members arrived at the club via a helicopter, they could see the building bouncing up and down. The Mets again win the NL East in 1973 after yet another improbable September surge. A pivotal moment came in the race, took place on Shea September 20th. The Mets come into the game sitting in third place, a game and a half behind the Pirates. On this night, the Buccos and Metropolitans are in the midst of a pivotal 3-game series. And the top of 12, with the game tied at 3. Pittsburgh outfielder Dave Augustine sends a long fly ball in the left field. The ball takes a weird bounce that goes straight up in the air after bouncing up to the top of the wall. And amazingly, the ball comes back onto the playing field into a shot Cleon Jones' glove, who spins and fires a perfect relay throw to shortstop Bud Harrelson, who fires home to nail Richie Zisk at the plate. The Mets would wrap up the W with an RBI in 13th to bring them within a half game. They beat the Buccos the next day to take over first, and they would never relinquish their stranglehold for the rest of the year. They would upset the powerful Big Red Machine in a series that was marred by the Pete Rose Bud Harrelson brawl in Game 3 of the NLCS that we've covered on a few different occasions here. In 1973, the World Series, it was one of the most competitive ever, but the Mets would fall to Oakland A's, who are in the middle of winning back-to-back-to-back world titles. At the end of September 1973, Yankee Stadium in the Boogie Down Bronx was closing for renovations, which meant the stadium's prime tenants, the Yankees and the NFL Giants, need to find housing. So the Yankees will play at Shea during the 1974 and 75 season, while the Giants played their home game at the Yale Bowl in New Haven in 1973 and 1974, before moving to Shea in 1975. So if you're keeping score at home while I'm spitting at shit, that makes 4 different teams from 2 different sports that were using Shea Stadium at the time. And sidebar freaks, I can't help but think about the poor schedule makers for baseball and football in 1975. I mean, the logistics of figuring out a schedule when the other 3 teams are not using the joint, right? Or better yet, how about the poor groundskeeper manicuring and painting the field accurately? I mean, good Lord, those dudes had their work cut out for them. Not to mention, New York City in 1975 is a city in the midst of a financial crisis, and they almost default on all the loans. The budget costs contributed to a period of general despair to Shea Stadium, a period of time that will last several years. The most memorable football game in Shea Stadium history occurred on December 16th, 1973, when the Buffalo Bills destroyed the Jets' defensive line, and Bills running back Orenthal Jane Simpson runs for 200 yards in the snow en route to the first 2,000-yard rushing season for a running back. Mets owner Joe Payson dies in 1975, and her daughter, Lawinda De Roulet, takes over the mantle, and the Mets fans endure some lean years from 1977 to 1983. Attendance lagged, and for the first time, the Yankees and their new Yankee Stadium began outdrawing the Mets at the gate, and by 1976, the Yankees are riding high. On October 3rd, 1979, Pope John Paul II celebrates Mass at Shea Stadium, only the second time all year that the venue was packed, and that year, the Mets drew less than 1 million fans. To save money, the upper deck was closed, and instead the mezzanine was designated as general admission. Barring the strike season of 1981 and the COVID-shortened season of 2020, no Mets team has ever drawn smaller crowds. In January of 1980, Doubleday and Company brought controlling interest of the team from the Payson family, with Fred Wilpon, who would eventually buy the team from Nelson Doubleday, had 4% of minority stake. The Doubledays took steps to revitalize the park, adding a full-color instant replay screen behind the left center field fence, and the iconic Big Apple, a 9-foot mass of fiberboard slathered in red paint, shaped like an upside-down apple that pops out of a 10-foot-high top hat when a Mets player drops dog. The original Big Apple and all its cheese and splendor, and lives on at Citi Field, and it now sits near the ballpark bullpen gate entrance. On October 12th and 13th, 1982, the Clash opened for The Who. The concert became a popular bootleg recording that was released in 2008. Simon and Garfunkel took their successful reunion tour at Shea on August 6th, 1983, and 12 days later, the Police and R.E.M. blow up the stage at the venue. On December 10, 1983, the Jets played the last game at Shea Stadium, a crushing 34-7 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Jets finished their time at Shea with a 70-7 record and 3 ties. And they would join the New York Giants at a football-only facility in the New Jersey Meadowlands, which has since been demolished. The 1985 season starts off with a bang in 1985 when free agent acquisition Gary Carter smokes a walk-off dinger in the 12th inning, the 10th inning, but despite the superlative season by rookie pitcher Dwight Gooden, the Mets would get edged out by the Cards in the NL pennant race. 1986, the Mets blow the doors off the National League counterparts. They dig deep, win the pennant and World Series that year. Game 3 of the hard-fought NLCS saw Lenny Nails Dykstra drop Dong into Shea's bullpen for the walk-up win. As thrilling as the NLCS was against the Astros, the World Series was one for the ages, and especially Game 6 when the Mets shocked the Red Sox with a walk-up win on the infamous Buckner play. In October of 1989, the Rolling Stones brought their Steel Wheels tour to Shea Stadium for 6 nights, and I saw this show in Washington, D.C. at RFK Stadium, and it was the monster concert for the summer of 1989. In April of 1991, Reds Hall of Fame shortstop Barry Larkin named his first child Brielle DeShea because he enjoyed playing at the stadium. At some point, Cecil Cooper followed suit by naming his youngest daughter Shea, and the best-known Major League child named for Shea was in 2004 the son of Mets killer Chipper Jones. And also, former Braves outfielder Robert Fick, he found an abandoned kitten in the stadium and adopted her and named her Shea. On August 2nd, 1991, 4 days before the end of the season, Bill Shea dies due to complications from a stroke he suffered 2 years earlier, and his self-deprecating prediction that the stadium would rename the building 15 minutes after his death never came to fruition. On April 15th, 1998, the Yankees had to play a home game at Shea Stadium after a 500-pound concrete steel and concrete beam collapses at the house that the roof built when Del Strawberry, who is by now a bomber, he smashes a home run in the 5th inning, and the stadium operator partially raises the apple at half mast before loading again. That very same night, the Mets played at Shea, capping off an unusual 4-team, 2-league doubleheader in one stadium. The playoff run in 1999 features 2 of Shea's more memorable blasts. The first one was Todd Pratt's homer to end the NLDS against the Snakes of Arizona, and 8 days later, Robin Ventura would walk it off in the 15th with his infamous grand single when he hits a walk-off grand slam versus the Braves, but needing only 1 run to go ahead, he stops running after rounding first base. The Mets failed to capture the pennant that year, but Shea would host its last World Series when the Mets fall to the Yankees in the Subway Series of 2000. The tragedy of September 11th, 2001, it had traumatized the citizens of New York City in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks that would lead to the New York Twin Towers collapsing and huge piles of rubble. Shea Stadium served as a staging area for relief efforts, with Mets players helping to unpack and sort out supplies. When baseball returns to the park on September 21st, the Mets wore hats used by city service agencies such as the fire and police department. Mets star slugger and catcher Mike Piazza made it a heartwarming tearjerker of a moment with his game-winning 2-run homer in the 8th. Postseason action doesn't return to Shea until 2006, where Game 7 of the NLCS against the St. Louis Cardinals had two more unforgettable memories inside of Shea. The first was Andy Chavez leaving snow cone catch to Rob Scott Rowland of a home run, and Adam Wainwright's filthy 0-2 curveball that locked up Mets outfielder Carlos Beltran for the World Series win, for the NLCS win, knocking the Mets out of the post. And that would be the last postseason run in Shea, as both the 2007 and 2008 seasons were marred by Mets collapses down the stretch. And the curtain is drawn on the stadium's mortality with a disappointing 4-2 loss to the Florida Marlins. The Mets would finish with a 1,173 record at the Venerable Crib. After that last game against the Fish, the Mets shut it down in style when Tom Terrific Seaver throws the last pitch of the stadium into the waiting glove of Mike Piazza. On July 16th and 18th of 2008, the last big concert at Shea goes down when Billy Joel and Paul McCartney bid farewell to the old girl before tens of thousands of screaming fans. The demolition of Shea begins on October 14th, 2008, and by February 2009, the project is complete, and though Shea never achieved the mythical status of Ebbets Field, a small band of die-hard Met fans came out in the cold October weather to shed a tear and say goodbye. It was a big bowl that could hold 55,000 screaming fanatics. It was loud. She had personality despite her size and goofy, unsophisticated appearance, and it inspired sentimentality and manic energy. It was very much the antithesis of New York in their own old-fashioned way. So, with Shea Stadium disintegrating around us into the sands of historical time, let's walk across the parking lot and visit the Mets' current home since 2009, Citi Field. So, when the Dodgers left for Brooklyn after the 1957 season, Ebbets Field held the charm of one of baseball's most nostalgic parks ever and was being erased from history. Decades later, the Baltimore Orioles constructed Oriole Park and Camden Yards in 1992, ushering in a new wave of retro ballparks and paying homage to the classics like Ebbets and Forbes and Pittsburgh. And Citi Field followed suit, capturing Ebbets Field's most iconic feature and its distinctive home plate entrance, which is ironic when you remember, I already told you, the Dodgers had initially shown interest in relocating to a new ballpark on the very same plot of land that Citi Field now stands on. Since 1964, the Mets have been rooted in Queens, where they spent the first 44 or 46 years playing to their fanatical followers in Shea. As I explained to you, the fans had a real love-hate relationship with the storied structure, and by the mid-1990s, the team begins advocating for a new ballpark as Shea led the modern amenities that were being found in the newer ballparks. In 2006, the team unveils plans for a new ballpark and secured approval for $632.1 million in bonds for construction. On November 13, 2006, team and local civic leaders break ground, and it's announced that the new crib will be called Citi Field after Citi Group Incorporated, who purchased name rights for $20 million over the next 20 years. Whether arriving by car or stepping off the 7 train, fans are greeted by a structure that evokes imaginative nostalgia of Ebbets, with an exterior of stunning red and limestone facade, high-arching entrances reminiscent of the Dodgers' once legendary New York home. The most striking feature to the eye from the outside is the Jackie Robinson Rotundo at the main entrance, a grand tribute to the stadium icon that was Evans, and the racial pioneer Jackie, who broke the color line in nearby Flatbush. Inside the rotunda, visitors will find 9 ideals associated with Jackie Robinson engraved in the floor. The walls are draped with flat-screen TV playing highlights from his groundbreaking career. Escalators and grand sweeping staircases lead fans to their seats, and the wide-open air concourses snake throughout the structure with continuous panoramic views of the field. With a seating capacity of 42,000, Citi Field offers Mets fans a sense of intimacy that Shea Stadium never could. Nearly 42% of the crib seats are located in the lower deck, ensuring that the faithful is close to the action. The main three-tiered grandstand stretches from the right field orange foul pole to home plate, and then extends to the left field orange pole and in the left center field. The Pepsi porch in right field is inspired by Old Tiger Stadium and hangs over the field for an inviting target for left-handed sluggers. One of the more unique group areas inside the park is the clubhouse, a field-level seating section in right field that provides an unparalleled view of the game. Fans also have access to several clubs, including Evans Club, the Delta Sky Club, behind home plate, as well as the Acela Club, a restaurant located in the left field corner between the upper and lower decks. Citi Field is rich in modern amenities. The outfield picnic area is known as the Taste of the City. It offers a variety of dining options and a lively atmosphere for fans to mingle. The ballpark features an interactive museum showcasing team memorabilia and Hall of Fame display. And the famous Big Apple, a Olympic feature from the Shea Stadium, has been replicated and now sits behind the center field fence, rising each time a Mets player drops down. Fans can pose for photos with the original apple, which is located outside of Citi Field, and additionally, the iconic skyline that adored Shea Stadium scoreboards has been relocated to the top of the restaurant and center field. Citi Field boasts 2 high-depth speed scoreboards, as well as one in center field and one in right field. The first sporting event in the structure was an NCAA college baseball game on March 29, 2009 between the St. John's Red Storm and the Georgetown Hoyas. The first game to be played in the crib, Major League game, happened on April 13, 2009, a 6-3 loss to the San Diego Padres. Padres center fielder Jody Garrett drops the first bomb in the stadium's history when he takes Mets pitcher Mike Pelfrey deep in the first inning. However, due to the lack of home runs in its early years, the team would adjust the ballpark's dimensions before the 2012 season. The outfield walls and left field were lowered from 12 feet to 8, moved in about 4 to 12 feet in certain parts of the yard. Further adjustments were made before the 2014 season, with the deepest part in center field reduced from 390 feet to 380. And other walls were moved in 5 to 11 feet, and these changes also introduced a new bar-style seating in the newly created space. Prior to the 2023 season, the Mets installed a massive new scoreboard in center field, measuring 17,400 square feet or 500,303 square meters, which is 3 times larger than its predecessor. In 2013, Citi Field hosted the Major League All-Star Game, marking the second time the Mets have hosted the event, the first being the 1964 Midsummer Classic at Shea Stadium. Citi Field became the site of playoff baseball for the first time in 2015 when the Mets won the National League pennant before losing the World Series to the Kansas City Royals. With its blend of modern amenities and its nostalgic design, Citi Field offers fans an exceptional baseball experience while soaking in the rich history of the national pastime. Her address is 41 Cedar Way, Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, Queens, New York. She has public transit accessibility from the Long Island Railroad, the New York Subway, or the 213, 248, and 266 bus lines. Her asymmetrical Kentucky bluegrass playing dimensions are as followed. Down the left field line is 335 feet or 102 meters. The left center field power alley is 300 feet or 109 meters away from the disc. Deep left center field is 385 feet, 117 meters. Straightaway center is 408 feet or 124 meters. Deep right center field is 398 feet or 121 meters. Right center field is 375 feet, 114 meters. And from home plate to the orange foul pole in right field is 330 feet or 101 meters. The Populous architecture firm is responsible for the design and construction of the crib, and Populous is the firm formerly known as HAK Sports. It brought us the modern marvels of sports engineering in Orioles Park in Camden Yards, Coors Field in Colorado, and the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, among others. Citi Field is currently home of the Mets and the New York City MLS soccer team. And if you live in Queens or plan to visit there this summer, launch your drones and set the coordinates for 40 degrees, 45 feet, 25 inches north by 73 degrees, 50 feet, 45 inches west. And let that bad boy hover. Drink it in, man. Make sure you get plenty of pics of this magnificent baseball structure and refer back to the show to appreciate the long and storied history of the game and this blue-collar borough. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamen of all ages, this has been the history of baseball in Queens, New York. Thank you for stopping by this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's presentation as much as I enjoyed putting in the work and getting it out to you. I would never charge you good brothers and sisters for the baseball content offered up here at Backwards K Pod. I'm just going to keep coming through every week with that baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
And I'm going to keep it consistent like my man Bill Spaceman Lee. I'll be up bright and early tomorrow morning putting in a bullpen session, working up a sweat for my next start in the rotation, and I promise, guys, I'll try to be better next week. As Gunner has us racing up the tracks, feverishly trying to get you back to your loved ones, patiently awaiting your return to Terrapin Station, I can see the history of baseball in Queens, New York getting smaller and smaller in my rearview mirrors. So with that, I now turn my attention to our never say die baseball hydra. I reach under my kimonos, grab my katana blade, and with one violent hack, I chop the head off that beast, only to see two new baseball topics appear in its place. And speaking of next week, like the good Dr. Dre says, the mother effing saga continues. I will be taking a look at the baseball journey of one of the great managers during the 90s and 2000s. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, I present Hall of Fame manager Bobby Cox. But you OGs know how I roll. That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. And that felt good, folks. I think I accomplished my goals this week with my history of baseball Queens dissertation. So bitty to see. I came, I saw, I kicked this show's ass. Thank you for coming out. God bless and win the day. Parents, if you see your kid sitting on the couch with their noses in the phone and pads, looking unproductive AF, do something you'll look back on with fond memories as you take your last breath. Grab a couple gloves and a ball, then take those monkeys outside for a game of catch. Me and my trusty partner, Charlie Guns, we're throwing our Gunner Hendersons high in the sky for all to see. That's our number 2s, y'all. Jazz in peace. We got the great Bobby Cox on deck next week. Gonna take it to some Braves baseball. Sounds like fun. I can't wait. See ya.